Listen, I've been training military cadets across 17 star systems for the better part of 3 centuries. Fourth-act shock troops, Zelani death commandos, even those insufferable Krex battle dancers who insist on spinning before they shoot. I thought I'd seen every species at their worst, their most arrogant, their most pathetically overconfident. Then the humans arrived. The transport bay doors hissed open that morning, and out stepped this 5 foot nothing, wearing what I later learned were called flip-flops, rubber footwear held on by thin straps, if you can believe such absurdity. Her hair was pulled back in something called a messy bun, and she carried a single duffel bag that looked older than some of my cadets. "Commander Vex Tharn?" Her voice was surprisingly steady. "Lieutenant Kira Volkov, Earth Defense Corps, reporting for integrated training." The 73 cadets in Formation Hall Beta went silent. You know that particular silence, the kind that precedes either reverent awe or explosive laughter. This was definitely the latter. Cadet Zorthak, a 7-foot Mandorian with arms thick as plasma conduits, was the first to crack. His deep rumble of amusement echoed off the metal walls. Within seconds, the entire formation was shaking with barely contained mirth. I should have stopped it immediately, should have barked them back into line, reminded them that mockery of Allied forces was a court-martial offense. But honestly, I was curious to see how the tiny human would handle it. She didn't flinch, didn't blush, didn't stammer, didn't even acknowledge the sound. She just stood there waiting, while my finest cadets dissolved into juvenile snickering. Silence. The word cracked like a whip across the formation. 73 aliens snapped to attention so fast I heard several necks pop. Cadet Zorthak, front and center, now. The Mandorian's amusement died instantly. He marched forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human that could have swallowed a small building. "Sir, yes sir. You find something amusing about our allies' appearance?" "Sir, no sir." "Then explain the noise." Zorthak's mandibles clicked nervously. "Sir, it's just, she's so small, sir. And those shoes." His voice trailed off as he realized how stupid he sounded. I was about to deliver a lecture that would strip paint from bulkheads when the human spoke up. "Actually, Commander, if I may." "Oh, this should be good." I gestured for her to continue. "Cadet Zorthak, was it?" She took a step forward, craning her neck to look up at him. The size difference was almost comical, like a sparrow addressing a war mech. "You're right. These shoes are ridiculous for military training. And I am small compared to you." The confusion on Zorthak's face was priceless. Was she agreeing with him? "But here's the thing," she continued, her tone conversational, almost friendly. "Size and equipment are just variables in an equation. And humans, we're really, really good at math." Before anyone could process what that meant, she moved. I've watched combat footage from 1,000 battles. I've seen Zelani assassins strike with cobra-quick precision, witnessed Krex warriors dance through laser grids that would dice a normal being into component atoms. But what Lieutenant Kira Volkov did in the next 3 seconds redefined my understanding of physics. She didn't attack Zorthak, that would have been suicide, and humans aren't known for their suicidal tendencies in training scenarios. Instead, she simply repositioned. A quick step left, a duck under his reflexive grab, and suddenly she was behind him with one of those ridiculous flip-flops pressed against his neck just below his primary breathing aperture. "Carotid pressure point," she said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "Humans call it the sleepy button. Works on about 97% of carbon-based species with standard cardiovascular systems, Mandorians included." Zorthak stood frozen, his eyes wide with the sudden realization that this tiny being in rubber footwear could render him unconscious in approximately 4 seconds. "The shoes," she continued, still holding the flip-flop against his neck, "have a rigid sole that makes an excellent improvised pressure applicator. The loose fit means I can slip them off instantly for use as tools or weapons, and the quiet step means you never heard me coming." She stepped back, sliding the flip-flop onto her foot in one fluid motion. Zorthak remained frozen, staring at her like she'd just performed actual magic. "Any other observations about my equipment, Cadet?" "Sir, no sir," he whispered. "Good." She turned back to me. "Commander, where would you like me to stow my gear?" The formation hall remained dead silent. I could hear the hum of atmospheric processors, the distant throb of the station's rotation engines, the sound of 73 beings reassessing everything they thought they knew about humans. Barracks 7, I managed. Orientation begins at 0800 tomorrow. Understood, sir. She shouldered her ancient duffel bag and headed for the exit, her flip-flops making soft slapping sounds against the deck plating. As soon as the doors closed behind her, the whispers started. Did you see how fast she moved? Where did she learn that technique? Those shoes are actually genius. I held up a hand for silence, but my mind was racing. In 30 seconds, one unarmed human had demonstrated tactical thinking, anatomical knowledge, improvised weapons deployment, and psychological warfare. All while wearing the most ridiculous footwear I'd ever seen in a military context. The next morning's briefing was memorable. I'd assigned Lieutenant Volkov to Blue Squad, figuring her unique skills might complement their aggressive tactics. Blue Squad was led by Cadet Captain Tis, a Zelani female with razor-sharp reflexes and an ego to match. The squad included Zorthak, who'd been unusually quiet since yesterday, 2 Krex twins who moved like liquid metal, and a Vorthak heavy weapons specialist whose plasma cannon could punch through starship hulls. The training scenario was simple: urban combat in a simulated colony under siege. Blue Squad would assault a fortified position held by Red Squad, with victory conditions based on casualty ratios and objective completion time. Standard loadout, I announced. Plasma rifles, tactical armor, sensor packages, mission parameters are in your briefing packets. Volkov raised her hand. Yes, Lieutenant? Sir, what's the policy on improvised equipment? I should have seen it coming, should have recognized the gleam in her eyes, the slight smile that didn't quite reach her lips. But I was still thinking like a conventional military instructor. Standard regulations apply. No weapons or equipment not specifically authorized for the exercise. Understood, sir. She didn't ask for authorization. She didn't need to. The urban combat zone was a maze of prefabricated buildings, narrow alleys, and elevated positions. Red Squad had 30 minutes to establish their defensive perimeter before Blue Squad's assault began. Both teams were equipped with standard simulation weapons, plasma rifles that fired harmless energy pulses with full sensory feedback. Getting shot meant temporary paralysis and immediate extraction from the exercise. Blue Squad spent their prep time like professionals, checking equipment, reviewing building schematics, coordinating attack vectors. Volkov spent hers collecting empty beverage containers from the break area. What are you doing? This hissed. Preparing contingencies, Volkov replied, stuffing aluminum cans into her cargo pockets. That's garbage. That's raw material. When the exercise began, Blue Squad moved with textbook precision. Tis led from the front, her plasma rifle sweeping corners with mechanical efficiency. The Krex twins flanked wide, their movements synchronized like a choreographed dance. Zorthak provided mobile cover, his massive frame serving as a walking shield. The Vorthak Heavy took position for long-range support. And Volkov? She disappeared. Not literally. The tracking sensors still showed her biosignature moving through the combat zone. But she'd vanished from visual contact, melted into shadows and service corridors like smoke. Red Squad's defensive positions were well chosen. Overlapping fields of fire, multiple fallback positions, excellent sensor coverage. Their leader, Cadet Captain Morks, was a veteran of actual combat missions. His tactical deployment was flawless. It didn't matter. The first indication something was wrong came from Red Squad's communications. Contact, Sector 7, Alpha. Blue Squad, advancing on primary approach. Confirmed. Deploying countermeasures. Wait. Where's their 5th team member? I count 4 hostiles, probably covering their retreat route. Standard human paranoia. Then the lights went out, all of them. Every illumination panel in the combat zone went dark simultaneously, plunging 40 city blocks into absolute blackness. Emergency lighting kicked in 3 seconds later, bathing everything in hellish red shadows. What the hell just happened? Morks's voice crackled over the comm system. Main power coupling's been severed, came the reply from Red Squad's tech specialist. Someone accessed the primary distribution node. That's impossible. The access panels are sealed and require specialized tools to... The explanation was cut off by the sound of small explosions echoing through the simulation zone. Not weapons, fire something else. Something that made sharp cracking sounds followed by the hiss of pressurized gas. "Smoke grenades?" someone asked. "Negative. Not on the authorized equipment list." Then the screaming started. Not pain, confusion, surprise, the kind of noise sentient beings make when their entire understanding of reality gets turned inside out. Red Squad's carefully coordinated defensive positions dissolved into chaos as thick, choking white smoke billowed through the simulation zone. "I can't see anything." "Where's it coming from?" "Thermal sensors are useless, there's too much interference." "Maintain positions. Don't let them." The transmission cut to static, then another, and another. One by one, Red Squad's communications network went silent. From my observation post, I watched the tactical display with growing amazement. Red Squad's biosignatures were winking out, not dead, just unconscious or incapacitated. But there were no weapon discharges registering on the sensors. No plasma rifle fire, no explosive detonations, nothing that should have been capable of neutralizing a trained military squad. Blue Squad was advancing through the chaos like they owned the place. Tiss and her team moved with confident precision, their sensors somehow cutting through interference that had blinded their opponents. They reached their primary objective, a simulated command center, in less than 15 minutes. Total mission time, 14 minutes, 37 seconds. Red Squad casualties, 100%. Blue Squad casualties, 0. It was the most lopsided victory in the history of the training program. The after-action debrief was educational. "Would someone care to explain," I said, gesturing at the tactical display, "how Blue Squad achieved complete mission success without firing a single authorized weapon?" Tiss looked uncomfortable. "Sir," Lieutenant Volkov suggested some alternative approaches. "Such as?" Volkov stepped forward. "Sir, with permission, I'd like to demonstrate." She produced one of the aluminum cans from her cargo pocket, now dented and punctured in several places. Standard beverage container, 12 fluid ounces. When filled with water and punctured with precise holes, it becomes a pressure release device. The escaping vapor creates dense visual concealment while simultaneously overloading thermal sensors. She held up what looked like a section of metal conduit. Maintenance access panel. Standard electromagnetic seal, easily bypassed with a makeshift electromagnetic pulse device constructed from. She paused, counting on her fingers. 3 emergency food heating elements, 2 comm-unit battery packs, and some copper wire salvaged from a damaged sensor relay. My head was starting to hurt. And the power grid failure? Simple mechanical leverage applied to the primary coupling junction. No tools required, just proper understanding of structural stress points and approximately 47 seconds of applied pressure. You disabled an entire city block's power grid with your bare hands? Yes, sir. General Korath had been observing the exercise from the command balcony. The old Vorthak warrior had seen actual combat in the frontier wars, had commanded fleets and conquered worlds. He'd been unusually quiet during the debrief, his scarred features thoughtful. Now he leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "How?" Volkov met his gaze without flinching. "Sir? How did your species survive long enough to develop space travel? You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. You're small, fragile, slower than most predators. By all evolutionary logic, humans should have been extinct before you learned to make fire." The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around the briefing room, 73 alien cadets waited for an answer that would explain the impossible thing they'd just witnessed. Volkov was quiet for a long moment, considering her response. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that seemed far too heavy for someone her size. "Sir, you're absolutely right. We shouldn't have survived. Every predator on Earth was bigger, stronger, faster than us. We couldn't outrun them, couldn't outfight them, couldn't hide from them forever." She paused, looking around the room at faces that ranged from curious to confused to deeply unsettled. "So we learned to cheat." The silence that followed was the kind you hear in the moments before a star goes nova pregnant with explosive potential, heavy with the weight of revelation. Every disadvantage became an advantage if we looked at it sideways. Too small to fight a cave bear? Build a trap that doesn't require physical strength? Too slow to escape a predator? Create tools that extend our reach and multiply our force, too weak to survive alone. Develop cooperation strategies that turn individual weakness into collective strength. She was warming to her subject now, her voice gaining intensity. We became the species that looks at an impossible problem and says, what if we tried this completely insane thing instead? We turned our limitations into weapons, our weaknesses into strengths, our disadvantages into tactical advantages. General Korath's eyes had gone very wide. And this? This is standard human behavior? Sir, this is barely intermediate-level human behavior. What you saw today was basic improvisation and field adaptation. I didn't even use any of the really creative stuff. The really creative stuff. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the station's temperature regulation. If this was basic, Lieutenant, I said carefully, what would you consider? Advanced human tactics? The smile that crossed her face was the kind of expression apex predators wear when they've cornered something tasty. Well, sir, that would depend on the scenario parameters and available resources, but if you really want a demonstration— She let the sentence hang unfinished, but the implication was clear. This morning's exercise had been her showing off, playing with her food, demonstrating just enough capability to make a point without revealing the true extent of human tactical thinking. General Korath stood up slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the briefing room. His scarred hands were trembling not with fear, but with something that might have been excitement or terror, possibly both. Commander Vex Tharn, he said quietly, I want you to cancel all remaining training exercises. Sir, cancel them. Immediately. His voice was getting stronger, more urgent. And send a priority message to High Command. Tell them we need to accelerate the human integration timeline. Sir, may I ask why? The old general looked at Volkov for a long moment, then back at me. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of military experience and hard-won wisdom. Because if humans can do this much damage with beverage containers and flip-flops, I want them on our side when the real war starts. That's when Lieutenant Kira Volkov raised her hand again. Sir, about that war you just mentioned. The expression on her face made my blood freeze, because it wasn't surprise or confusion or curiosity about classified military intelligence. It was recognition. What exactly, she said quietly, do you think we came here to train for? The silence that followed could have been measured in geological epochs. General Korath's scarred face went through several color changes, deep purple, pale gray, then a sickly yellow that I'd only seen when Vorthax were about to either fight or flee. Lieutenant, he said very carefully, that information is classified at the highest levels of the Devourers. She said it like she was commenting on the weather. Extragalactic, silicon-based. They consume organic matter and convert it into computational substrate for their hive mind network. First contact was 18 months ago when they ate the Kepler station. Every being in the room stopped breathing. Kepler station was supposed to be a classified disaster, a deep space research facility that had simply vanished. No distress. Signals, no wreckage, no survivors. The official reports blamed a catastrophic reactor failure. But this tiny human in flip-flops had just described classified intelligence that maybe 12 beings in the galaxy were supposed to know. How? General Korath whispered. Could Earth possibly know about? Because they tried to eat us first. The words hit the briefing room like a plasma torpedo. I felt my primary heart skip several beats, while my secondary heart tried to compensate for the shock. Impossible, Thys breathed. Earth is barely a Class II civilization. You don't even have proper interstellar travel yet. If the Devourers had attacked your homeworld, we'd be dead, yeah. Volkov's expression was matter-of-fact, almost casual. Except they made a mistake. They assumed we'd react like every other species they'd encountered. She stood up, began pacing a distinctly human behavior that I'd noticed made other species nervous. There was something predatory about the way humans moved when they were thinking. See, the Devourers have a pattern. They send scout ships to evaluate a planet's defensive capabilities, then return with overwhelming force to harvest everything organic. Works great against civilizations that fight conventionally, but humans, that smile again, the apex predator smile. Humans don't fight conventionally. What did you do? General Korath's voice was barely a whisper. We cheated. Obviously. She stopped pacing, turned to face the room. The scout ship landed in the Pacific Ocean, started sampling marine life. Standard procedure for them: analyze the dominant species, catalog their capabilities, estimate harvest yield. And, well, they analyzed us, cataloged our capabilities. Small, weak, no natural weapons, limited technology, perfect harvest candidates. Cadet Zorthak, who'd been silent since his humiliation yesterday, finally found his voice. But you're still here? Yeah. Funny thing about that. Analysis, they never checked to see if we were analyzing them right back. The implications of that statement were staggering. While an extragalactic species was studying humanity, humanity was studying them. Both sides gathering intelligence, both sides preparing for war, except one side had no idea the other was playing the same game. The scout ship stayed in Earth orbit for 73 days, Volkov continued. Long enough for our best scientists to reverse engineer their technology, figure out their biology, understand their psychology. Long enough to realize that conventional weapons wouldn't work against silicon-based life forms with redundant processing cores. So what did you do? I asked, though I was starting to suspect the answer would give me nightmares. We built a virus. Not biological, computational. Something that would target their hive mind network and turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. General Korath was leaning forward now, his scarred hands gripping the edge of the briefing table. A virus that affects silicon-based consciousness. Humans are really good with computers, sir. Always have been. And the thing about hive minds is that they're basically just very large, very complex computer networks. Attack the network architecture. And you attack every connected node simultaneously, Korath finished. But delivering such a virus would require physical contact with their primary processing core. Yeah. Which meant someone had to get close enough to their command ship to upload it directly. The room fell silent again as we all processed what she was describing. A suicide mission. A one-way trip into the heart of an extragalactic invasion fleet. Who? Thys asked quietly. Volkov's expression softened slightly. Volunteer crew of the ESS Defiance. 12 humans who knew they weren't coming home. They used a modified cargo hauler, looked completely harmless on sensors. The Devourers never saw them coming until it was too late. And the virus worked? The virus worked. Uploaded directly into their command ship's core, then propagated through their hive network faster than they could isolate infected nodes. Turned their shared consciousness into shared chaos. Every Devourer in the invasion fleet started receiving contradictory orders, false memories, recursive logic loops. She paused, her expression distant. They tore themselves apart in about 6 hours. Started attacking each other, couldn't distinguish friend from foe, couldn't coordinate their movements. The few that survived the initial chaos fled back to wherever they came from. Incredible, General Korath breathed. One small ship, 12 humans, and they destroyed an entire invasion fleet. Sir, with respect, you're missing the point. Which is, the fleet that attacked Earth, that was their advanced scout force. The real invasion is coming. The temperature in the briefing room seemed to drop several degrees. Around the table, alien faces went pale as the full scope of the threat became clear. How do you know? I managed. Because we've been monitoring their communications ever since. Long-range sensor arrays, quantum entanglement interceptors, some tech we reverse-engineered from their scout ship. The Devourers aren't done with this galaxy. They're just regrouping. Volkov pulled out what looked like a standard datapad, but I could see modifications that definitely weren't regulation. Current intelligence suggests a main invasion force approximately 1,000 times larger than what attacked Earth. Eta, 18 standard months. 1,000 times larger. Thys's voice was barely audible. Gets worse. They've learned from their defeat. New ship designs, improved network architecture, probably countermeasures against computational viruses. They're not going to underestimate organic life forms again. General Korath stood up slowly, his massive frame trembling with the weight of revelation. And Earth sent you here to teach you how to cheat. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Or maybe a reprieve, it was hard to tell which. See? Earth's government ran the numbers. 1,000-fold increase in enemy forces means conventional resistance is impossible. Even if every species in the galaxy united, fought together with perfect coordination, we'd still lose. The math is simple. So we surrender? Zorthak's voice cracked with despair. Hell no. The vehemence in her voice was startling. We change the math. She activated her modified datapad, and holographic displays filled the air above the briefing table. Star charts, fleet movements, technological specifications, battle plans that looked like something from a fever dream. Humans have been preparing for this fight since the day the first Devourer ship fled our system. New technologies, new tactics, new ways of thinking about warfare that the Devourers won't see coming. The displays showed human ships, if you could call them that. They looked more like asteroids with engines, space debris with weapons systems, floating garbage heaps bristling with sensors. Stealth technology based on making our ships look like naturally occurring phenomena. Weapon systems disguised as industrial equipment, Trojan horse tactics on a galactic scale. But why come here? I asked. Why not just prepare Earth's defenses? Because Earth alone can't win this. We need allies. We need every species in the galaxy working together, thinking together, fighting together. And most importantly, she gestured to the alien faces around the room, we need you to learn how to think like humans. The silence stretched on as 73 alien minds struggled to process what she was proposing. Learning to think like humans meant abandoning centuries of military doctrine, throwing out established tactical principles, embracing the kind of chaos that went against every instinct for order and discipline. It meant learning to cheat. The training program, General Korath said slowly, was never about integrating human forces into our military structure. No, sir, it was about integrating our military structure into human thinking, teaching your best and brightest to see warfare the way we do, to look at impossible odds and ask, what if we tried something completely insane instead? Cadet Captain Thiss was staring at the holographic displays with an expression of horrified fascination. These tactics, they're completely illogical, wasteful, inefficient. By conventional standards, absolutely. But the Devourers think conventionally too. They expect resistance to follow logical patterns, to use efficient tactics, to fight according to established military principles. Volkov's smile was back, but now it carried a different quality, not predatory protective. The smile of someone who'd found a way to defend everything she cared about. What they don't expect is for an entire galaxy to start fighting like humans. Improvising, adapting, turning every weakness into a strength and every disadvantage into a weapon. The beverage cans, Zorthak said suddenly, the power grid sabotage, the flip-flops, you were demonstrating human tactical thinking, yeah. Looking at available resources and seeing possibilities instead of limitations, taking equipment designed for one purpose and using it for something completely different. General Korath was studying the battle plans with the intensity of someone trying to decode an alien language, which, in a sense, he was. These strategies, they require thinking patterns that go against millions of years of evolutionary development. I know. That's why we have 18 months to train you. 18 months to retrain the entire galaxy's military forces to think like humans. Sir, with respect, you're still thinking too small. She touched another control on her datapad. The holographic displays changed, showing not military assets but civilian populations, industrial centers, entire worlds. We're not just training your military forces, we're training your entire civilization. Every mechanic who learns to improvise solutions, every engineer who starts seeing problems as opportunities, every citizen who looks at their daily routine and asks, what if I did this differently, becomes part of our defensive network. The scope of what she was describing was staggering. Not just military revolution, but cultural transformation on a galactic scale. The Devourers are coming to harvest organic life, she continued. But organic life isn't just about biology, it's about creativity, adaptability, the ability to find solutions that pure logic would never discover. It's about cheating when the rules don't work in your favor. And if we fail? Her expression grew serious. Then the Devourers consume this galaxy, convert every organic being into computational substrate, and move on to the next one, and the next, and the next. She paused, looking around the room at faces that now showed not mockery or amusement, but grim determination. But we're not going to fail. Because 18 months from now, when that invasion force arrives, they're going to encounter something they've never seen before. Not just humans fighting like humans, but an entire galaxy that's learned to think like us. They'll be expecting conventional resistance. That apex predator smile appeared one final time. Instead, they're going to get the most unconventional, illogical, impossibly creative resistance in the history of warfare. They're going to get a galaxy full of beings who've learned that sometimes the best way to win. She looked directly at General Korath, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, is to cheat better than anyone else. And that, I realized with growing excitement and terror, was exactly what humanity had come here to teach us. How to cheat on a galactic scale. The war was coming whether we were ready or not. But for the first time since I'd learned about the Devourer threat, I began to believe we might actually have a chance. Because we had something the Devourers didn't expect. We had humans. And apparently, that changed everything.